Okay, this video talk is to highlight that the people who believe Einstein's relativity don't necessarily believe the same thing, and they are in disagreement as to what they believe Einstein's relativity is. They try to cover this up. They don't like to admit that they believe different things when they talk about Einstein's relativity. So they like to present a false image that they're in agreement about what Einstein's relativity is. But if you see my previous videos, they don't really agree, and amendments have been made to Einstein's relativity. So Einstein's relativity consists of special relativity and general relativity, and there's a transition between the two stages of Einstein's relativity, and the issue is it a smooth transition? And the answer is it is not a smooth transition between the two theories. There are difficulties which the believers in Einstein's relativity usually like to gloss over and sweep under the carpet. So on to the issue of this video. Is Einstein's special relativity a relativity theory or not? One might think that is easy to answer. The clue is in the word relativity in the title, Einstein's special relativity theory. But there are those who say it is not a relativity theory. This means calling it a relativity theory is a misnomer. So starting with this person who calls himself the hammock physicist, he refers to what Tony Rothman says. This is Tony Rothman. He's a physicist and a writer, and he specializes in cosmology and so forth. So Tony Rothman says, special relativity is probably the greatest misnomer in the history of science. And hammock physicist agrees with him. He says, I wholeheartedly agree. Amongst all scientific terms, the single word relativity stands out as absolute record holder for triggering an astonishing amount of utter nonsense. So if you try to discuss relativity theory, you can end up with people talking nonsense at you. And part of the problem is relativity theory is a misnomer. People think relativity theory means it's a relativity theory when it's not. The hammock physicist says it was not Einstein but Max Planck who introduced the term relativity theory. That was in 1906, the year following Einstein's annual miracle. Despite Einstein's opposition, the name stuck. Years later, Einstein surrendered, and from 1911 onwards, he started to use the term relativity theory himself, but he never felt comfortable with the term, and in his writings, he always put the word in quotes. It causes a great deal of confusion in discussing Einstein's special relativity when some people think it is a relativity theory, as its name suggests, when others think it is not a relativity theory. And it ties into the Lorentz ether theory, a theory that retains the ether frame and with much the same maths as Einstein's special relativity, which ideally special relativity should be Lorentz ether theory when it's not really a relativity theory. But then the people who believe it is a relativity theory then erroneously, less often, believe there is no ether frame, and the ether frame can go by lots of other names like preferred frame. So this is a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and Spoot, he thinks special relativity has a preferred frame, and there's an education job to convince those that think there is not a preferred frame to believe otherwise. Arguing between those who believe relativity theory is a relativity theory with those who think it isn't can lead nowhere, with people not agreeing. But it is a relativity theory in the sense that it has the relativity principle, but then after doing that the goalposts are moved and a preferred ether frame is added. And so that's the end of the little talk. So this is where all a great deal of confusion comes about. The people who are thinking special relativity is a relativity theory when it's not, and people are thinking special relativity does not allow a preferred or ether frame, when actually you can just add it on. You can just move the goalposts and add it on. Thank you at the end.